Now, I love playing as Dante and Nero. Whenever I go back and play Devil May Cry 4 or 5, I will always enjoy playing as them. Both of their gameplay styles are extremely distinct, with Dante having a wide arsenal of weapons and guns to explore with so he can do all kinds of cool stuff, and Nero having a more focused kit that still requires a decent amount of skill to master. In the midst of playing both of these characters, I have also tried out other characters in the series as well. Some were relatively cool to experiment with, others were, let me just circle this and just drag this out and yeah. I fixed DMC5. One character outside of Dante and Nero that I also enjoyed playing as was Vergil. I've dabbled with the character from 3 to 4 and 5, and I gotta say that Devil May Cry 4 Special Edition of Vergil is the oddest version of Vergil I have ever played. I know DMC Devil May Cry version of Vergil exists, but I don't really consider him part of the mainline franchise. Plus, the reboot actually wanted to deviate and experiment than rather do its own thing, so of course it's going to be different from the original formula, just like with Reboot Dante did as well. Vergil in Devil May Cry 4 Special Edition was supposed to be an evolution of the character. In most ways, things have definitely improved on the character, but in other ways, some choices make me kind of scratch my head a bit. DMC4 Special Edition has its own set of problems that I personally dislike, which I tend to stick with the vanilla version whenever I play with Dante and Nero. Plus some Held Hostage by DMC4 Hook. It allows you to use almost any room as a training mode. It also lets you fight bosses back to back, and there's also additional modes that you can use. It even has Twitch integration. I wish DMC4 Special Edition had it. But Vergil in DMC4 Special Edition is just interesting, I tell you what. He emits a certain type of aura that breaks everything around him. So what I want to talk about for this video is how weirdly designed Vergil is in DMC4 SE. Some problems are simple nitpicks that can be disregarded, honestly, and others are very glaring issues that was fortunately fixed in DMC5. Originally, I wanted to talk about DMC3 versions of Vergil, and of course I'll get there eventually, but I wanted to zero in my focus on 4 because I've always been at odds with the character for a while. Which is funny because I made a guide about this dude like years ago. Since then, there have been way more detailed guides going over more unique mechanics that Vergil has, and I definitely recommend checking them out. I'm going to link them in the description as I go over certain things as well. But for the first thing I want to focus on right now are some of Vergil's basic mechanics, starting with his god dang concentration meter, or motivation meter if you want to call it that. This meter was a new addition in DMC4 SE. Now, when this mechanic was talked about before the game's release on Capcom's livestream and on their website, I originally thought, maybe it's going to be a cool mechanic, like, I want to be hopeful. Now, since the game has come out, I have left kind of confused. Because the way that the meter works is that if you're playing in a calm and collected way, you will do well. This means you have to be connecting your attacks to whatever that you're fighting against, and you cannot run. So basically, if you're flailing around like a toddler throwing a temper tantrum, you're going to deplete that gauge pretty quickly. But if you're standing in place right next to whatever hellspawn that you're fighting against, that meter will shoot up fast. And I'm talking faster than my blood pressure when I eat pizza on a Friday. And I understand why this is done. The devs wanted you to feel like you were Vergil. He's cold, calculated, he doesn't rush in on his opponents the way that Dante does. But the problem with this is that it is very, very easy to gain concentration meter without really working for it. Because what's the point of attacking an enemy to gain concentration when you simply just stand your ground in a menacing way? The way that it affects Vergil is that his damage output increases and it gives him additional bonuses as well. With Yamato, his range increases to absurd levels. Maybe he transferred Marth's grab range onto his sword or something. Like, look at this, bro. While it's not a lot of his attacks that has this sort of range, I'm just surprised he's able to do this. With Vergil and DMC5, you can at least see the range increase with this blue slash effect, but Vergil and DMC4 can cut air so hard that the wind launches demons, I guess. For Beowulf though, during his charge inputs, he gains an additional charge. Usually speaking, when you hold down the attack button with Beowulf, you will have 2 levels of charge. But with max concentration, he can get a 3rd charge, and this also does more damage. So much damage that the enemy that he's fighting against will be obliterated. And if they don't disintegrate upon impact, Vergil signs them up to his own space program, launching them straight into orbit, powered by pure motivation. Now, for the last weapon, Force Edge, he gains after images, which creates multi-hit properties on his attacks. This affects a lot of his moves, including Stinger, and that also screws with how it behaves. When you use Stinger at max concentration, the game starts to break a bit. My game will start glitching out anytime that I use a double trigger Stinger. Sometimes I'll start seeing random textures start to glitch out or models become warped. Other times my game will completely slow down and I'll lose a ton of frames. This is a 10-year-old game. My CPU is an i7-12700KF with an RTX 3070 Ti. Why am I experiencing problems with this game? The vanilla version of DMC4 ran like butter. I have never had issues with it at all. Even on my old laptop that I had back in 2012, ran smooth at 60 FPS despite using low settings. Like, that thing could run on a toaster. It was black magic. But DMC4 Vergil is so broken, I guess he just makes the whole game broken. Dude is so strong that he can make Dante better, which is something I stated before. But if you load Vergil at any stage, including Bloody Palace, quit out and then load Dante, his round trip will be faster than before. From the use of his concentration mechanic, one thing that I noticed is that his damage output can be really insane if maxed out. From what I said earlier, basically, yeah, he does a lot of damage. I guess the same could be said about all three Vergils overall, even Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3 Vergil, since his level 4 super is insane. But with DMC4, he feels a bit overtuned. When I boot up Bloody Palace and begin the first stage, if I blink while I'm playing, yeah, he just deletes everything and I miss what happens. The only few instances outside of bosses where he doesn't cast his foes into oblivion within 5 seconds is when you are on DMD fighting either Angelos, Mega Scarecrows, or Blitz. That is if you don't try to cheese them. You know, I was really undecided if DMC4 SE Vergil was actually stronger than his DMC5 version. I mean, don't get me wrong, DMC5 Vergil is definitely busted. Once when he gets into SDT mode and uses Doppelganger, whatever he's fighting against should just lie down. However, DMC4 Vergil doesn't rely on his DT that much to do a lot of damage. Granted, I really do think it has to deal with how enemy health is handled for both DMC4 and 5. And it got to a point where I shrugged my shoulders and just put up a poll to see what people thought of DMC4 and 5 Vergil being who's the strongest. And DMC5 Vergil ended up winning. Just barely though. With this weird evolution of Vergil and DMC4, I will say that I am a huge fan of some of the moves that they added in his arsenal, even if I have some personal gripes with them. Like with Vergil's Yamato attack, I got so used to it how it was in DMC3, where Vergil does this wide sweeping move that hits a large area. It was fast and I don't know, man. It was just freaking iconic for the character. Now, he doesn't have that animation in DMC4, but he has two other combos with their own specific purposes. In general, Yamato was given more utility to take advantage of. For example, giving Yamato the same treatment as Million Stabs, where the move becomes changed depending on if you hold down the melee button as the character reaches its intended target. Yamato's rapid slash attack transforms into this rising launcher called Rising Star. Depending on the position of Vergil, you can even jump cancel out of it. This is something that I wish that was utilized more often with other moves and mechanics. Looking at you, Nero. Luna Phase was another attack that I was pretty fond of, considering that it had a fast startup and it can keep you suspended in midair during certain combos. And in Devil Trigger mode, Vergil just turns into Sonic. One of my favorite additions that he got has to be Aerial Stinger, at least a Devil Trigger version of it. You see, Aerial Stinger was one of those ill-fated moves where its mobility becomes amazing when you use Devil Trigger. Without it, yeah, you're not going to be moving anywhere. You might be able to run across Skyrim in less time compared to completing a mission by traveling only using Aerial Stinger. With Devil Trigger though, you're basically flying in the sky. Combine this with reversals, a technique that allows you to redirect your locked on inputs. This makes Vergil's aerial mobility really nice. It's a shame that you need to be in Devil Trigger mode. It would have been nice to be able to do this without it. Another set of attacks, or I guess in this case mechanics, that I really enjoy are his summon swords. Specifically the additions that he received. Summon swords gotten faster compared to how they used to be in Devil May Cry 3. However, I don't like how small they are. They look like tiny little toothpicks. With his swords, he has Spiral Swords, Storm Swords, Blistering Swords, and Heavy Rain Swords. I think one of my favorite additions is definitely Heavy Rain Swords because you can create a giant just wall of swords and it stuns an enemy in its place. And depending on what you do with this move, you can combine some hilarious setups that does a ton of damage. With every move that Vergil gains though, there are certain downsides for other attacks. And one of those attacks is Starfall. Starfall is a staple move that is very important to his move list. In DMC3, it was a fast striking dive kick that has some tracking properties. When you land a hit while in midair, it causes the enemy to become stunned in the air for a little bit. But in DMC4, this move knocks enemies downwards and away from you. I want you to picture the look on my face when I found out about this for the first time. This is a problem because the enemy is knocked away from you, preventing you from continuing your combo with jump canceling or in some cases air tricking. Now, because of that, you are forced to utilize summon swords to cancel the knockback of this move. Luckily, DMC5 Vergil reverted this change from 4, turning it back into a move where you can jump cancel it without relying on a summoned sword. This might be a nitpick, but for me, I would rather have this move function normally. Another move that I wish that would function like his DMC3 counterpart is Judgement Cut. Now, don't get me wrong, I do enjoy the additions that it got, like using Just Frame's input. Basically means that when you release the melee button at the right time, you get a more powerful version of that move. I like that, that's awesome, but I kind of get confused that you can't stack multiple Judgement Cuts in sequence. That is, unless you do a very particular set of button inputs that allows you to chain them together while rising in the air. Now, this technique pretty much allows you to cancel any attack, making it one of Vergil's most useful techniques. It combines air trick with Judgement Cut, basically allowing you to air trick and then go into Judgement Cut. However, it is highly dependent on your frame rate, so it can be very difficult to get consistently. The higher the frame rate, the harder it is to perform this technique. There are several videos that go over this mechanic, and I highly suggest giving them a watch if you're curious on how it works. But basically, the only way that you can chain multiple Judgement Cuts is if you use this technique. Again, this is just a minor nitpick. Past this point is when things start to get a little questionable on Vergil's design. For instance, let's take a look at what was done with his air trick utility. It has been changed to a point where I'm not really sure what the developers were thinking. No, really, it's confusing to me. The way that they handle Vergil's air trick is probably the main reason why I have not touched Vergil that much in DMC4 Special Edition. Before we get into some of the negative aspects that I disliked about his air trick, let's talk about some of the positives first. Air trick is Vergil's go-to move when he wants to quickly teleport to a target. In DMC4, Vergil has the option to use this ability to cancel his attacks as well. Pretty much anything that you can think of, he can cancel it. In DMC3, Vergil was not able to do this at all. Not in a way that you could cancel, say, a Stinger or a Rapid Slash mid-animation like you can in DMC4 and in DMC5. You are even able to use it in the air indefinitely since it isn't really considered to be a one-use move like Air Hike or Caliber. These moves required you to use an enemy step on an enemy in order to be able to use it again. But meanwhile, Vergil's like, jump canceling, no, we don't do that here. Now, this sounds good on paper, but it presents another problem where staying in the air is extremely easy to do. Since you can be in the air with very little effort, now enemies can barely contest you at all. Either way, air trick is a very strong tool in this game, and it continues to be pretty good in DMC5 since you can cancel attacks with it. And now, we reach to the section where I talk about air trick mechanics as a whole, which makes me somewhat depressed because a lot was changed in its functionality. To explain everything, in Devil May Cry 3, Vergil's air trick functioned like this. You lock on, you press a circle button, and then you teleport to the target that you're locked onto. That is called air trick, which is the main move that I talked about for DMC4 SE Vergil. If you pressed up and the style button together while you're locked on, you trick in the air, so you go up. This was called trick up. If you pressed back and the style button together while you're locked on, you air trick backwards, which is called trick down. This was simple, easy to remember, easy to perform. Before DMC4 SE was released, the reboot DMC Devil May Cry reared its head around the corner and sort of changed everything. Instead of having a normal air trick, now Vergil uses embedded swords. Before Vergil teleports to an enemy, a sword embeds into a target that he soft locked onto, which allows him to teleport to that enemy or bring the enemy to him. There are more things that I could cover over for this mechanic, but the key point to take away here is that the use of embedded swords became staple in Vergil's gameplay from then on out. DMC4 SE uses it, and of course DMC5 uses it as well. But with DMC4 SE, it's the most perplexing, weirdest adjustment I've ever seen towards Vergil's mobility. To use air trick towards a target, you need to have embedded swords latched onto an enemy, at least one. But to trick up, you need to take your finger off the lock on button and then press the start button
without having an embedded sword.
Do you see the problem here? Like, do you see it? If you use embedded swords at all, you are forced to use air trick rather than trick up. You cannot air trick up unless you exploit a glitch where you use Judgement cut end, which you need to be grounded. So attempting to use air trick at all will automatically place a sword on an enemy that's not embedded with one already. What is this, man? What is this? Like, I can just picture the motherfucker right now, the developer, whoever designed this character, just rubbing his hands together, be like, hey, we about to fuck his shit up. Like, man, you don't understand. I had the perfect dream in my head about DMC4 Vergil, and they just squashed it. Oh, and to use trick down? Yeah, you need to be in Devil Trigger, and to do this move, you press jump and down. Instead of using that, you know, that big old circle style button or B button if you use an Xbox controller, yeah, instead of pressing that button, you press jump and down. Due to air trick essentially being your main option for movement, even canceling attacks, it fundamentally changes how Vergil has to be played compared to any of the other versions, even the reboot. Okay, maybe not that much. Throughout all the different variations that Vergil has went through, he is able to keep all of his teleport tools on hand, and he can move around in any area without any problem. This means that you can approach and retreat when necessary, repositioning yourself as needed without being restricted all that much. DMC4 takes that idea and just chucks it. Just straight up launch it. Like, I don't know why they did this. So all of this hoopla over here is the main reason why I don't really play Vergil as much, at least for DMC4, although I still like to play him more than I like playing V in Devil May Cry 5. Anyway, I think that's about it. I hope you enjoy the video and all that jazz. Again, I apologize for not being as active as I was before, but like I said earlier, I wanted to take a long break. But as usual, thanks again for watching the video. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you like my content, feel free to subscribe and yada yada yada. And I will see you guys next time.